heavens declare the glory of God.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Mine isn't perfect either. So I never actually introduced myself, I don't think, but
No.
my name is Samuel Spoonhour. What's your name?
Mason, nice to meet you.
Mason,
Yeah.
good to meet you. Yeah, sweet. Okay, so what are your thoughts on the afterlife?
It's
Like-
something that I've thought about a lot.
Okay.
And I don't know, it's a complicated topic to where, to me, I kind of get mixed up in the details, right? Because we live in a predominantly Christian society,
Mm-hmm.
but there's just so many outside influences, so many different religions that can trace their roots back thousands of years.
Yeah.
My biggest my biggest interest kind of is, where does religion come from, and like why is it something that, regardless of what corner of the globe you live on, why is it something that everybody practices?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting you just kind of went straight into that. So I've been very blessed to live
Yep.
in a family that has a lot of information.
Yep.
And honestly, religion, from what I've seen, especially psychologically, it's people seeking a way out of death.
Yes, exactly.
Death is
Yep.
one thing that is absolutely for sure. People always say there are two for sure things in life. It's death and taxes.
Right.
You can't escape taxes, but you can't escape death. Death is just 10 out of 10 people die. So I think it's people really seeking the divine.
It's like a coping mechanism. Would you think that's?
I don't know if it's coping. I think for a lot of people it is.
Yes.
But I think in general it really is like finding meaning, purpose, because if we're all going to die,
Yep.
then life is pointless in just the limited time that we have. What we do is essentially pointless, right? And especially if, like, say materialism's true, we're all going to heat death. And so there's really no ultimate purpose to anything that you do. But if there's some type of divine or creator
Innate
behind it
purpose,
all,
right?
that divine, that creator can give us purpose, can give us ultimate intent for our existence. So that's really, I think, where that comes from. And I guess you could call me religious in a sense. I'm more about into like science and history.
Me too, exactly. Yeah.
I really love philosophy.
Me
I'm
too.
Actually
Too much.
really-
It gets your wires crossed. I can't.
Interesting.
It's something that I can't go too deep into, because then sometimes you'll go down the rabbit hole and then you'll be like, life's pointless, and then
Yeah, well, nihilism,
yeah.
maybe I'm not pronouncing that right, but can
Yeah.
lead to that. I've also been blessed to, I've been able to analyze and like considerably, properly consider
Yeah.
atheism, even some levels of Buddhism, Judaism, Muslim or Islam, Christianity. I've been able to actually like understand a lot of these world religions, and I call atheism a religion at this point.
It pretty much.
It kind
yeah.
of becomes that, especially with evolution. But the point is that I've come to a conclusion based upon science and evidence. So I'm still trying to be open-minded, but I actually try to have a proper conclusion.
Yep.
Because I think there is evidence for such a view. So like, I believe in the existence of a God. Part of the reason I believe that is the Kalam cosmological argument. Maybe you've heard of this.
I know you're gonna have to.
William Lane Craig was the one
Yep.
who kind of brought this up. I think it was in 1980s. He wrote a book on it. It was an old argument for God, but it's
Yep.
just that everything that begins to exist must have a cause. Okay, the universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. Now that's contingent on the fact that the universe began.
Yep.
So I'm a big proponent of the Big Bang.
Yep.
So that's why I think that argument's true. There are 5 big reasons why the Big Bang happened, and I think the biggest one is honestly, it's the second law of thermodynamics.
Yep.
Everything's running down. If it's been running down for an infinite amount of time, an infinite amount of time ago we would have ran down. So if the universe is running down and yet we're still here, that means that there was a starting point.
Yeah.
Where everything it started full, entropy was at a low enough level that you can have the Big Bang, and then eventually everything's going to, of course, run down.
Yep.
So in that sense, I think there's something behind it that is beyond it, because if you have space, matter, time, and energy beginning, then the cause for that couldn't be those things. It has to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and all powerful. Now that sounds like a God already.
Yeah.
So I think it would also have to be very intelligent. Even the cosmological constant is pointing to this. It's 1 in 10 to the 30th power. I don't know if you know what the cosmological constant is.
You read and listen to so much of that stuff, and it's just
But either way,
my dumb mind can't comprehend.
the point is, the fine-tuning argument goes like this: the universe runs on a razor edge,
Yep.
and that razor edge is pointing to the opposite of chance, but rather intention.
Mhm.
And intention only comes from mind.
And you think it's intentional?
I think that the universe is intentional, yes. And that also goes with, there's 2 more reasons: the moral and ontological arguments. I could go into those, but those will take forever. But what I'm saying is, I believe in God for philosophical and scientific
But do you
reasons.
think it's like the Judeo-Christian kind of God? Or I don't think,
You can't necessarily say that just based off those 2 arguments.
because I think I'm kind of with you. I think there is a God, but I don't know if it can be personified or necessarily has humans in its best interest.
Well, and that's a great point. Either deist or theist. In fact, Einstein believed in a deist God. He was convinced by Lemaitre, who was a Catholic priest,
Yeah.
who worked with Hubble and Lemaitre's law, who worked with Hubble to create the Hubble-Lemaitre law, which is that the universe is constantly expanding. And so he was convinced by this so-called redshift that, there is in fact a creator. I messed with the math on the cosmological constant. I should not have done that. And so he changed it back, and now we have the proper cosmological constant, and then he became a deist. And just admitted to the genius of a God behind the universe. So really, from that argument, that's all you get. You get some level of personhood, because in order to have intention and create in the sense of a mind, you need some level of personality.
Yep.
And that's just seen in the world around us, right? That I love art. I love creating video. I see art. I see beauty. I see love. That shows me that this creator has those attributes, those characteristics. So that you could have some type of theistic God, but I wouldn't say automatically Judeo-Christian. You'd have to know if the historical claims are true. So like in Judeo-Christianity, you have the claim that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. I guess not Judeo-Christianity. Well, I guess you have Messianic Jews.
Yeah.
But if Jesus rose from the dead, then that means that, in a sense, he is most likely God in the flesh. He is who he said he is. Islam is correct if Jesus didn't die on the cross.
He's just a prophet, right?
Right, if he's just a prophet, and that Muhammad actually is the final prophet, and that he fulfilled the prophets, the prophecies.
Yeah.
And so I lean more toward, I'll just be honest with you, because we have to go fast.
Yeah, we got this interesting.
But the thing is that I believe that Christianity is true. I think that the claims of Christianity are true for, I would say, 2 big reasons. Actually, 3. The documents that we have are accurate to the documents that were written for multiple reasons. And I'll go over them here in a second really quick. But second one is that we have people who knew Jesus.
Yep.
And they, not only their lives were transformed, but they also gave up their lives for him when they knew him personally. Now, if they knew it was a lie that he had risen from the dead, they would be the first people to know. Why would they go and die for something like that?
That's an interesting thought, but people have died for their beliefs.
Oh yeah, but
not just.
But like, imagine this: if I'm a soldier in an army and I believe that I'm serving the right country, I will die for my country.
Mm-hmm.
Islam, right? 9/11 is proof of this, right?
Yes.
Religious belief will do this. The problem is that the Jews didn't believe exactly what Jesus taught. I mean, he was so controversial in his time. He was against the religious leaders of the time. And so there was a lot of like almost tension in this. And even when he was crucified, you have his disciples, most of them, running away, and then him coming back to them after he's, per se, risen from the dead, and then turning around and then being like, hey, you, hey, everybody. And then also the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they're like, Jesus Christ rose from the dead. You killed him, and he was the Messiah. And when before, they could hardly even stand up for Jesus. So something happened psychologically where it was an absolute hallucination of multiple people, which if you study psychology, it doesn't make sense because it like happened over multiple times, multiple days. Or you essentially have Jesus actually rising from the dead. And then you also have prophecies written before the New Testament, and that those things being fulfilled. So in terms of manuscripts, I've actually been able to read some of the translations of the old Greek ones.
Really?
And they're actually, it's
they're
really
quite
cool.
a bit different, aren't they, though? Because a lot of stuff gets kind of...
No, actually, they're very, very similar to what we have. So if you ask, Bart Ehrman, he's funny because he's a skeptic.
Yep.
And he is kind of a real good authority. He was asked one time, he was asked multiple. I forgot how it was phrased, but he was asked like if there's anything in, because he really attacks Christianity and he thinks the New Testament is false. Essentially, the Gospels aren't telling exactly all the truth. But he was asked like if there was anything in the New Testament you change, what would it be? He said nothing, because what we have is we have 4 accounts of people in different scenarios writing about these specific things they had seen, and in their own way. And you have people in different regions, and what you have is a beautiful account that if you put it all together, you might think, oh, that's contradictory, but they all agree on very specific things. Jesus taught in synagogues. He was very controversial. He made very big, bold statements that talked about prophecy in the Old Testament, talked about prophets and like Moses and Isaiah, and they all agree that he died on the cross and rose from the dead. And you even have external secular sources talking about these crazy Christians, followers of Jesus, going around telling people that Jesus rose from the dead and then dying for it. And so you have 10 sources from there, but Bart Ehrman is funny because he'll talk about how many errors you have in the manuscripts. But if you really study it through, we have 99.5, I think it's like 99.5% of the original. We have that now in our Bibles, in our biblical texts today, in our manuscripts.
Yep.
Because when you have like, say, a spelling error or a word missing, that counts as an error. So technically we have more errors than words, but it's because we have like a letter missing or a spelling error or a comma is missing. So really everything that's disputed, and actually Bart Ehrman was asked this, is that he said that absolutely everything in the Bible that is disputed about in the manuscripts, none of it has a theological impact on Christianity today. And pretty much any like scholar who is like really who really knows ancient texts will agree with that. But it's stuff you have to put effort into. Yeah. I've read the Bible over 10 times now. I'm on my 11th time. And all I've seen from it is this beautiful collective story of human beings messed up. God has promised to save human beings from their sin. Jesus comes, he makes all these bold claims that he is the incarnation of God, and he dies on a cross as a sacrifice to pay for our sins, so that all who look to him for their righteousness can then have his righteousness imputed onto them. And then as he rose from the dead, that's him essentially vindicating his truthfulness. So this is applicable to everyone, because everyone, in a sense, has broken God's law. Whether you've lied, stolen, blasphemed God's name, maybe as a guy you've lusted before. Okay, that's a hard one. If you've coveted anything that isn't yours, if you've dishonored your parents, now it's applicable to you and to your conscience. And so if this is true, then you can have freedom from your sin and eternal life and true shalom, which is perfect peace in God. You can have you could be with the divine, the one who created you and knows you best, and you can have literally what is best for you, because the Creator essentially intended that for you.
I would like to say one thing. So before I gotta get going.
I'm sorry, that was a lot.
That was good. But have you noticed that what I find very interesting is that kind of what you were talking about with like certain kind of hinting at morals from the Bible, right? So you don't even have to be a religious person, but have you noticed how, like, if you are coveting something, lying about something, it kind of like it nags at you to your core?
Yeah.
And those are exactly things that are in the Bible
Yes.
that you shouldn't do.
I watch a guy named Ray Comfort. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
I used to do a lot of his style, but he pointed that out to an atheist, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right." So I agree. I mean, you can suppress your conscience. In fact, all the time we'll tell ourselves, "Oh no, this is a good thing. This is a good thing."
Yeah.
I have that, like, literally whenever I'm doing something wrong, I try to convince myself it's good. Why would I do that? Because I have this conscience telling me this is bad.
Yep.
And so you have a society shaped, but you can suppress it, but it's still always there.
Yep.
And to me, that's also a bit of indicator of not just a moral law, but a moral giver. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point. So I want to give you, I didn't bring them. No, I was going to give you one of these, but I forgot the books.
Oh.
Yeah. I had a book of this. This is a booklet, and the book is awesome. It's 100 Reasons Why the Bible is, it's like scientifically true or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'll give you this. It's still a good read. It's like 20 of them, I think.
Can I ask you one thing about?
Yes.
So I've read a couple of books that try to prove the Bible, like The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. And
Yes, yeah. I haven't read that yet, but I want to.
It's pretty good. So like it kind of convinced me of the New Testament, but stuff in the Old Testament I can't wrap my head around. Like for
that's
example,
a bit harder.
like the flood story, right? If you look, countless different civilizations have a flood.
Right,
flood
Mesopotamian.
Yep.
I've actually read them. So like
the
the
Epic
Greek
of
one.
Gilgamesh was one.
Yep, I've read that one actually.
So that's like, I can't get my head around some dude making a 500-foot boat and shoving every animal in there.
We did have 100 years.
I can't get behind it. I'm pretty sure there was some event and there is validity to it.
Right.
But
right.
whether it's not happened how it's said in the Old Testament, I don't know.
Yeah, and
But-
I agree. That's hard to take in. I grew up in that realm, so that wasn't that hard for me.
Yeah.
Everyone calls them like these weird stories, and I'm like, listen.
Yeah.
First, you need to ultimately come to the realization that Jesus Christ is actually who he said he was.
Yep.
Because when that happens, I think God will show you that it's true.
Yep.
Either through historical evidence, which I think there is, or even just through the fact that you believe Jesus. Jesus talked about Noah as a real person. Jesus talked about Moses as a real person. If he is God, if he is who he said he was, and he is the embodiment of truth, because that's kind of the claim, that means by definition he can't lie. So if he talks about Noah as a real person, that means he must be a real person. It's not that you can't have alterations in history.
Yep.
I don't think that the Bible has necessarily an alteration. I think it's very thematic. It's very fictional. I think it's still true, but just like even Jesus rising from the dead is very metaphorical.
So
but
you don't
I still
believe in
think it's
biblical
literal.
literalism, is what you're saying? Because I don't think I do.
I think you need to understand it in context.
Yes.
So I think that literally there was a flood, and literally there were people who were saved in a boat. But how it's written is not designed to give you.
There's a truth behind it. Like it's supposed to send a message.
Absolutely.
That's kind of where I'm
So
standing. Yeah.
I think that Noah has specific details
Yep.
that I think makes it more literal. But I think, like, I'm studying the Genesis account right now, the first chapter.
Yes. Yep.
It's not intended to be some science book.
You're right. Like
about-
the Garden of Eden. It's not like some biology textbook, right?
Sure,
But-
I think there was a Garden of Eden.
Okay.
Because in the Fertile Crescent, there's a place where all four rivers meet.
Yep.
It's actually the perfect spot to have it.
Yep.
So it's a very fertile spot too. So it's not crazy to think that. But I think, like, the first chapter of Genesis is different than the second chapter. If you actually, like, put them together, there's two accounts of Adam being created. Two
That's what
accounts
people
of Eve
said.
being
I've never.
created.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you read Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, you get two accounts. Because Genesis chapter 1 is actually, it's literally a pushback against Mesopotamian and Egyptian or just pagan creation accounts. I have an archaeological study Bible, actually goes over this, about
Cool.
the accounts of the Mesopotamian accounts and then the Egyptian ones. Listen, these people came out from pagan culture. The Jews being told this by Moses in a public setting.
Weren't Jews originally not
They're called
polytheistic,
Hebrews.
like monolateral or something, where they
Well-
believed in multiple gods, but they chose.
Kind of. So
Yeah.
because they came from the Egyptian gods, they actually in Exodus, God told them, he said, these idols that you have, you need to smash them, get rid of them, and serve only me. And because they had agreed, this is after they make the covenant. And they still have these idols. And so because they came from Egypt, they have something like 50 gods.
Yep.
And so the Genesis account is all about how God, instead of him being like, oh, he just pops out of nowhere, which actually, and then other gods creating other gods and coming into existence, God is pre-existent. He's self-existent. And he takes the world from nothing and then creates something. And then he takes this chaos and organizes it, which is actually, it's a beginning structure for the whole rest of the Bible. Because if you go from Genesis all the way to Revelation, what you see this down spiral, almost like entropy, and God is trying to bring it back up to where Revelation is this final God taking chaos and organizing it. He's going to recreate the entire world,
Yep.
take away all the sin and all the sickness, and organize it to now perfection again. So it's literally God perfecting it all, making it perfect, human beings messing it up because they have a free choice, and then God bringing it back to order. So the first chapter is literally just giving you a whole layout for the whole Bible. So that's the beauty of it, but it's not a science textbook. It doesn't tell you the age. I don't think the age is important.
I will never. You'll never
but-
convince me on the 6,000 year Earth. That's
Well, it could
What?
be God could have just created it fully grown, but he also could have taken time into it. Either way, what matters is, did God create it or not?
yeah. I think that's people
So-
get so caught up in that it doesn't matter. in my
Right.
opinion,
Yes.
but-
And that could be so controversial. Hopefully my mom doesn't watch this video. But either way, hey, Mason, what a pleasure.
Nice
I
to meet you.
appreciate it. I just hope you think about this stuff sincerely. Sadly, 160,000 people die every 24 hours. You could be next. You could literally go out running and get hit by a car.
Yeah, I got a heart
I
attack on that.
don't want that to happen. This is why I do this,
Yeah.
because I want people to not only
Yeah.
think sincerely about their death, but also realize that if Christianity is true, you can have hope and freedom in Christ, not just from your sin, but from death.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and like when you think something is true. Like when you have the cure for cancer, you share it with people, man.
Right. Yeah.
I know the cure for sin and death. I'm gonna tell people, so I can't hold back. But yeah, what a pleasure. Did you stop?